Ogres, onions, lasagna. This pedal's got something in common with them. Let's check out the MXR layers. That might have been one of the worst intros to my videos yet.
I would say it's the best.
Jokes aside, I'm very excited to talk about the pedal that I've got in front of me today. This is the MXR Layers pedal. And to give you kind of a brief explanation to what you were hearing just in that small snippet there, the Layers essentially is a sound sustainer, note retainer, delay pedal, ambient sort of workstation, all within the MXR casing that we all know and love. Nice and small, but there's a lot going on with this pedal. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking, and I'm going to spend a bit more time just letting you hear what it does. But in the kind of the simplest terms to what this pedal can do, is essentially you hit a note, you hit a chord, you then press the pedal, you notice that one of these lights have now triggered. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can keep that going. There's a couple of ways that you can add extra notes to that as well. One of my favorite ways has actually been putting one of the settings up and it just actually catches all the notes for you. And you can either stop that by setting it with the decay there, or you can double press it on the foot switch to completely stop it. So immediately my first impressions were post-rock bands are going to love this. Anyone who likes to set a pad and solo over are going to love this. Anyone who's a big fan of something like the Electro Harmonix Freeze are also going to be a huge fan of this as well. So that's it kind of just in a nutshell. Like, if that's not enough to, that could be enough, sorry, to satiate quite a few people. I know certainly for myself, as soon as I heard that and as soon as I kind of used some of those functions there, I was immediately sold on this pedal. But let's dive a little bit deeper in because this thing has got a lot under the hood. So if we take a quick look at the layout of the pedal, it's quite easy to get your head around. The mix is going to control, obviously, the mix of the wet and the dry signal. The trigger's quite an interesting one, which I will touch on just in its own little section. The attack, that's basically going to determine the kind of ramp off of the retained note that's in here. You can either have it cut off quite quickly or you can have it a little bit more gradual. It's very much dependent on what you need it for. The decay as well is very simple to understand as well. Anywhere kind of counterclockwise, it's going to be quite a short sort of retained note, whereas there is an infinite setting if you turn that all the way to the top here. And unlike a delay pedal, it doesn't immediately start to oscillate and kind of go up in volume, but there are a couple of settings that I'll show you a little bit later that can happen. So that's worth kind of keeping an eye on, especially if you're going to be adding loads and loads of notes to it. Or specifically if you've got more pedals kind of going into this, like delays or reverbs and everything. But for you to get some sounds kind of kicking out of it, as I showed you, there's a couple of different settings that you can use with the layers. Now, the main one that I think is the kind of flagship sort of sound in it is initiating all three of these, I mean, I'm just going to call them layers to be fair, which you hit a note or a chord, as I showed you. That's then activated R1 in the middle there, and because my decay is just below half there, the note is just going to die out as you heard. But the pedal is still active, which this is where the trigger aspect comes into, because When it's at the low setting here, that's just my dry signal. If I turn that up all the way to the top, you'll notice there is another little LED that is starting to light up there. Basically what this is going to do is this is going to catch any notes that you're playing into it, and it will automatically start layering it. So if I kind of just even build a chord up here. Now, the way that I've got that set up there, it's almost kind of acting like it's like an EBow or a sustainer pickup or something, you know, along those lines. But where I find kind of the most fun comes with this pedal particularly is when you put the decay up all the way to the infinite setting and put the trigger to whatever sort of sensitivity you want it to. So that's me totally dined that out. This is just below there, and you'll notice that the sound won't go away. It will just keep adding to within the 3 layers. That's what I think is one of the cool things, is it's not going to like just keep stacking infinite notes on top of each other. It does stick to just the 3 there, so it doesn't get too washy. Now, one of the things that particularly I love to do with with pedals kind of that are very, very similar to this, i.e. the Electro-Harmonix Freeze and whatnot, is actually set a pad, and then it gives me something that I can solo over or I can play chords over. So even let's just keep this nice and simple, just with like an E or something here. I'll build like an E chord out of this. And if I turn down the trigger there, it means that the pedal isn't going to be catching any new notes that I'm going to be playing through it. So I'll turn the mix back up and I'll play over that there. Now, obviously, if you do have other pedals running into that as well, that is going to give you just, obviously, it's not going to be just a dry signal that's going to be playing over the top of it. So if you've got any delays, any reverbs or anything, this will work absolutely perfectly with this pedal. Now, you've noticed when I was just using it there as well, if you do have the trigger quite low to obviously play over whatever you've thrown into the layers, then if you do want to, say, change the chord that's playing or change the notes that have been put into it, you can just press on the foot switch that is actually on it, and that is going to, you know, change the note that it's picking up. And it allows you to kind of change keys, and it allows you to sort of, you know, change the mood of whatever you've thrown into it, which super, super cool option. Now, looking into some of the other like buttons that are on the front of the pedal here, there is a single button just up the top here. If I press that, it's only going to catch one note at a time. It means that things aren't going to get kind of overblown. And especially if you do want to, like, say, mimic the sort of sound of a sustainer of an EBow or anything, then you can easily do that by using this mode here. And much the same as the previous one there as well, that'll determine on if you have the decay all the way up or if you've got it quite short, especially if you maybe just want like an extra little bit of sustain towards your notes. And actually, while it's on the single option, this is a good time to show you the difference in the attack for it. So let's just hit a note in there. So yeah, a little bit more counterclockwise there. That's going to kind of cut things off just that little bit quicker. Whereas if you want it to be a bit more of a subtle kind of obviously tail off, then do it more clockwise. The other option, which is another particular favorite of mine, is the sub-octave switch here. Now what this is going to do is add a sub-octave to the notes that you're putting into it. So if you do want to have that kind of more like real rumbling sort of like bassiness to it as well, then this is an option that you should definitely check out. So if we just hit a note into it. And you can actually get rid of the last layer that you put in as well by just pressing the foot switch when you've got all three active there. Now, with this pedal, everything that you can get just on the surface there, hours and hours and hours of fun. But much like one of the last MXR pedals that was released called the Joshua, which is a delay pedal, that has got a lot more options just kind of below the surface, which as I said, you know, you're going to have loads of fun just with this as it is. But if you really want to get the kind of most out of the pedal, there is a couple of extra little bits, which I'll just explain to you just now. So where the other options come in is actually when you start to press and hold some of the buttons and initiate some of the knobs as well. So I'll just run through them really quickly and show you exactly what they are doing. So starting with just if you press and hold the single button here, if we use the mix knob, that's basically going to activate how much modulation we're going to get over the signal. So actually the best example for this is, let me just put that on the infinite setting here and I'll trigger a note. So if you immediately want to get it a little bit more spacey and a little bit kind of more modulated, then that's the way to do that. Now, if you want to adjust a little bit more of that modulation as well, then let me just do exactly the same as I did and trigger a note in here. So what you may have heard there is the kind of swell between chorus and vibrato, and that's exactly what I was doing. And that was just by holding the single button at the top there and then adjusting the attack with this pedal being just that little bit smaller. I hope I'm not covering it up too much. But basically, every single option I'm going to be doing that when holding a button and then twisting the corresponding knob here as well. Now, one of the other cool effects that are built into here is there's actually delay built into this as well. And that is used, well, that is activated by going over to the trigger, well, as I mentioned, holding just the single there. So let's just, again, just activate a little bit of a layer. And actually corresponding with that as well, you can set the tap tempo for that delay also, which you're basically just going to press and hold that single button again. And then tap the sub octave just below. Now this can actually be controlled with a foot switch as well that just plugs into the side here. You can either do tap tempo or you can actually plug in an expression pedal as well that is going to control the volume of that. So if you want to have the option to bring that mix in and out, especially if, you know, you're doing it maybe between songs, you can set this in between sort of songs in your set if you are playing live to kind of, you know, get rid of any dead noise in between any of your songs. Such a sort of like easy move to, personally for me, make a set just that little bit more elevated as well. Now, if we move on over to the sub-octave button here as well, as you would imagine, each one of the knobs is corresponding to a setting that it will use. The first one, if we're going to look at the trigger knob here, and this is basically the dry signal delay send that this is controlling. So So that's basically if you do want to turn the delay off or obviously lower the mix and whatnot, press and hold the sub octave and then put the trigger all the way counterclockwise and then start to turn it up just to whatever sort of level you want it at, which I'll just reset it actually. There we go, we'll delay back again there. The diffusion of the delay is going to be controlled when you actually go back to holding the single button here. And if you rotate the decay knob, just you get a little bit of a kind of textural effect on your layered note and your sustained stuff here. So That can be kind of used to preference as well. It's just going to give like a little bit of a texture just over all the layers that you've put in here as well. Now a couple of extra ones as well, so thanks for sticking along here. There is a lot obviously kind of going in this pedal. The root note sub-octave, that's going to be controlled if you hold the sub-octave here, and then if you twist the attack. So this basically will like, it'll attach itself to the lowest frequency that you hit. So if I put that all the way to the top here, let's set our feedback to where it was. And then again, let's start hitting some notes here. It's maybe getting a bit doomy there as well because I turned it all the way up, but obviously set to taste, set to whatever you need it for. Now, the very last one that I want to talk about is the wet only mode, and that's just holding the sub octave here and then rotating the mix knob. So if you do just want, if you want zero dry signal coming through here, then this is the one that you set it to. Which that gives you just obviously loads of scope to create just like proper sort of ambient ethereal stuff there without having your dry signal coming through. Specifically, like if you don't have delays and reverbs going into this and you want this to be kind of be your only ambience that you're using outside of actually playing lines, then that's definitely the setting for you. And maybe the most important setting here as well, because I've went in and I've tweaked all of those like internal sort of settings. You maybe don't know exactly where you're at with that. Easy way to reset that, press and hold each button there for 5 seconds. You'll see that it'll just flash just under my fingers and on the pedal. That's us back to completely normal, just whatever settings you had on it, and then you're going to just get and a nice spooky sound there right for the end. But that was just a very quick overview of the MXR layers there. I think this is going to come in real handy for a lot of folk who really into ambient sort of style guitar. Anyone who, like I said, kind of likes to create sort of a pad underneath any of their playing. Super handy for solos and super handy for like just practicing in the house as well. But the trick that I personally love when I see bands doing is when they've got that little bit of just kind of noise happening in between some songs, especially like setting up for like the next key or anything like that. I just think that is such a great touch, and certainly with something like this, it's just going to have that lovely sort of like modulated delay sort of sound, which just, I'm sure audiences will love it around the world as well. But let me know what you think about the brand new MXR layers in the comments down below, and what kind of applications you would see yourself using this in, because I think there's maybe a few that I've maybe not touched on that I would be really keen to hear about. But until next time, I've been Kieran, and this has just been a look at the MXR layers pedal. Have a great day. I didn't tell them to subscribe, how are they going to know?